Let's do some politics here. So, as we know, folks, Kamala Harris is now the presumptive nominee, so to speak, as she had secured enough delegates. She locked up the delegate majority within 1 day of Joe Biden withdrawing from the presidential race. And now we finally have our first polling to look at, which is post-Biden withdrawal, which means this is now the first head-to-head Kamala versus Trump polling with her as an actual candidate in the race. So this polling data was taken the 22nd and the 23rd. Here is CNN breaking down their findings.
First look at a Harris-Trump race that is no longer hypothetical. And what you see here is there's no clear leader in the top line of the horse race here. A 3-point margin. That's within the margin of error. Donald Trump at 49%.
Well, I mean, you want to get semantical. There is a clear leader. 3 points is not 1 point. 3 points is right on the edge of the margin of error. So if it was Trump 49.1 to 46, you'd say that was a clear leader because it's technically a tenth of a point outside the margin of error. Margin of error, assuming the maximum margin of error, 3 points, that would bring it up to a tie. So yeah, right. I mean, there is a clear leader.
Percent support. Kamala Harris at 46% support. That's about half the margin that we saw in the Biden versus Trump matchup the last couple of months that we polled. That was a 6-point race. This one now is a 3-point race. And if you look here, broken out by party, you see near total consolidation among Democrats for Harris, similar, more than 9 in 10 Republicans for Trump. Take a look here at the independents. Trump has 46%, Harris has 43%. Biden was losing independents to Trump in the last couple of months, according to our polling, by roughly 10 points. Now Harris is just losing them by 3, though remember, Biden won them by 13 points in 2020 when he won that election.
Okay, so what you're going to see as these results, come in and they break it down into a few more categories as the video goes on. It's only about 3 minutes. It's not long. Is that Kamala has definitely closed the margins, but the margins are still lopsided in Trump's favor. I mean, you had Biden winning independents by double digits in 2020. He was losing independents by double digits this year, which is why they forced him out of the race, because the polling just showed a wipeout. So they sub him out for a younger Democrat, and she closed up some margins. 94-5 is actually pretty impressive that as many Democrats have united behind her, since Biden was not polling that well among Democrats. But the independents, yes, so she's made up ground, but she's still underwater. And that's kind of the story of all of these polls. Go ahead.
Yeah, didn't they get into Latino and
young they
youth
get
vote?
into that. Yep.
Let's talk about the coalition.
Oh, sorry, I thought you wanted to see that. That's coming up soon.
Yeah, go ahead.
The president, now former candidate for re-election, Joe Biden, really struggled with was holding the Democratic coalition together. Where is Kamala Harris on that?
She's definitely making up ground with some of these key core constituencies. If you look here, this is a poll that we did with SSRS, contacting people we had polled in April and June, right? So you can actually track the movement. And you see here, young voters, it was a 7-point advantage for Trump in the spring over Biden. Now Kamala Harris has a 4-point advantage among young voters. Black voters, Joe Biden had a 47-point advantage in the spring. Kamala Harris has increased that to a 63 percentage point advantage there. Hispanic voters, Harris narrows Trump's advantage, but I just want to note again, Donald Trump numerically ahead among Hispanic voters within the margin of error. That was a key group in 2020 that Biden won overwhelmingly, so still work there to do for the Democrats. And among female voters, you see that Harris has increased the lead where they were tied among women when it was Biden on the ticket.
Okay, so go ahead.
Okay, these are terrible numbers if they stay this way or decline. So really the question is, does Harris have room to grow? Because if you look at that advantage with young voters, Democrat cannot win with a 4-point advantage with the 18 to 34 demographic. With black voters, a 63-point advantage is very weak. 47 is extraordinary, but 63 is extremely weak. And if I'm not wrong about this, I think that would be historic if that held up for a Republican to take 37% of the black vote, if it indeed worked out that way.
Well, she leads by 63, so that doesn't mean a Republican wins 37%. It means the difference is 63 points, which would put Trump's numbers at about 20, which in itself is historic. 20 is
Right.
historic. 15 would be historic.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
And a blowout for the
Yes,
Republicans
of course.
if he led like that. And with Hispanic voters still leading, yeah, and only a 5-point lead with female voters, only 5 points. So if these numbers held and the election were held tomorrow, Trump would win by a sizable margin. If they decline, as I suspect they will, we're going to get into it later, but Obama's no dummy. There may be a reason he's not endorsing.
The Hispanic voters is the real crusher. And this has been a story for a long time, so it's sort of less of a story now because it's not as newsworthy that Trump is leading with Hispanic voters. But that's a crusher. I think Biden won them like 60-30 last time. I mean, he won Hispanic voters by 30 points.
Right.
When Trump,
Arizona's gone at that point.
Well, yeah, you can kiss the Sun Belt goodbye. Arizona, Nevada, that's why even New Mexico Trump is making a play for. So, those numbers are better than Biden's, which is an indication of why he got out of the race, why they forced him out. Because if you look at Biden's numbers, I mean, it's just an absolute bloodbath. But this is still a very weak position to start from, especially when the candidate is not very good. Because that means she's going to have a hard time growing those numbers out.
Right.
Like, are you in a better spot now than with, an 81-year-old genocide accomplice who can't talk? Sure. But not enough. Not enough. And to the extent that Kamala is not a genocide, well, she's second in command. She's VP. She met with Netanyahu, too.
Well, not only that, attack you're seeing with Republicans, and I think it's good, is what did Kamala know and when did she know it?
Well, yeah,
they're going to hang on her. Well, you've been covering up for the fact that the president's not the president for years. Why should anyone trust what you say about anything? And then with Biden staying in office, that really is going to make life difficult for her because she's going to keep getting that question from Republicans. Is he competent to be president? Are you prepared to say that? Will you go on record saying that Joe Biden is competent to be president? No matter what, there's no good answer to that.
Exactly.
Numbers are fascinating, especially given that important piece of information you just gave us, which is that these our polling company, our colleagues, went back and talked to the exact same people that they talked to earlier. Okay, let's talk about what voters want from their presumptive new nominee.
One of the numbers that just jumped off the page when the poll came back, Dana, was this is among Democrats and Democratic-leaning independents. Do you want the next Democratic nominee, her name is Kamala Harris, we know, to continue Biden's policies or take the United States in a new direction? 53% say continue Biden's policies. 47% say take in a new direction. A near even split among Democrats looking for a new direction here. I think that is very interesting to watch forward how Kamala Harris campaigns on that. And then we've talked a lot about this all cycle long. Are you voting for a candidate or against a candidate? Take a look at what a difference a couple days make. For Harris, now it splits evenly. 50% of Harris supporters say they are casting their vote for her. 50% say they're doing it against Trump. Look at what that was when Biden was the nominee. 2/3 of his votes were against Trump. Only about a third, 37%, were for him. Harris changes that equation. Donald Trump, by the way, gets more affirmative support after the assassination attempt, after his convention. He's now up to 74% of his voters who say they are voting to cast their ballot for him. Only a quarter say they're casting their ballot to be opposed to Kamala Harris, Dana.
All right. So that is really interesting, too. And, these two questions, are you voting for Harris or against Trump among Harris voters? It's kind of the same question as this. It's not a surprise to me that those split roughly along the same lines. The fact that you have essentially a 50-50 split amongst Democrat or lean Democrat voters as to whether or not the successor to the current Democrat should continue the policies of the current Democrat. Yeah, that says a lot about where you're at. And so that's why you have, it makes sense that the 53% who say that Harris should continue Biden's policies, they would be excited to vote affirmatively for Harris, and that the 47% would just be voting against Trump because they think the country needs to go in a new direction. But you have there a very, very weak commitment to the record of the incumbent, which again puts you on very, very, very weak footing going into the home stretch of a campaign, which, if you had a talented candidate, there is some chance you could make that up. Although when you look at the electoral map, and as we've done, the inside straight they're looking at having to pull is a heavy lift to begin with. You're going to see over the next couple weeks whether she's capable of moving these polls, because while this is certainly an improvement over Biden, I mean, there's no denying that his numbers were just tanking. Don't forget, folks, they don't swap out a candidate mid-race unless they have to. And what those Biden numbers showed you is that they had to. So, this is a Hail Mary play. And like most Hail Mary plays, it looks like it's not going to work. Doesn't mean they were wrong to do it. They had to do it. They had no choice but to do it. But you're still looking at a very steep uphill battle for them.
Yeah, and good luck trying to recast the Biden record as a positive for her.
Right.
Running as the Biden-Harris administration, you might wish you hadn't done that branding exercise in preparation for your own run over the next few years. I don't think you're going to convince people that the wheelbarrows of cash they have to bring down to the grocery store for eggs is a good thing or exemplifies a good record. And as even a talented politician would have a hard time under these circumstances. That is not Kamala. The first time she gets a question she doesn't know how to answer and starts word salading, her numbers are going to go off a cliff. I do believe this is as good as it gets for her because she just does not have the skills to improve on it. What you got right now is a snapshot of partisanship.
Yeah, I mean, there's a chance she'll get a convention bounce, but that puts you in third week of August territory.
Right.
And then you have the debates. Like I said, I don't think the debates are going to I don't think debates matter very much unless they go the way Biden's went.
Unless,
And that really is not a debate
total
story.
Collapse.
Yeah, exactly. There was, as Russell said, that's more a news event than a debate story, right? It wasn't that Biden lost on points, right? It was that look at what we're dealing with here.
Right.
So that's the first real major breakdown in polling that we've seen. Reuters had one up that had Kamala up 44 to 42. That was the only other one that I've seen. And generally, if you look at the average, what I expect we'll see as more come in, is that you're going to see a slight closing of the gap. The question is, can she close it any further? Because as Russell said, this was a big week for her. This is the coronation week, right? And so this you would think might represent a peak. And so we will have to see.
Well, that's why I don't know how much the convention's going to do for her, because I would expect these numbers to pull back between now and the convention. So whatever bump she gets will be back to this.
Well, you're going to see the attack ads. You're going to see those kinds of things come out too.
They have not even begun, and there's a lot to work with Harris. Again, she had to drop out of New Hampshire because she was polling 5th in California, her home state.
Right. Exactly.
Please clap.